Well, it didn't take long for Rashee Rice's attorney to break out the victim card on behalf of his client. Holy cow. So we learned here yesterday that Rashee Rice was, in fact, driving the Lamborghini that was involved in this crash that took place Saturday night. We found out about it Sunday morning. But he was driving it on Saturday night. And it was a terrible crash that resulted in a 6-car pileup in Dallas. So we know that Rashee Rice was driving the speeding Lamborghini involved in that 6-car crash. 2 people were hospitalized with minor injuries. Rice is fully cooperating with the police and did answer all the questions asked of him about the crash, according to his attorney. The receiver also expressed a willingness to help the others involved in the crash. Now, this is a Lamborghini that he was leasing, and it could have been way worse. If you haven't seen the video of Rashee Rice driving this Lamborghini along with this Corvette, like a total madman between traffic at like 5, 6 in the afternoon on Saturday down in Dallas, you have to see it for yourself because it is insane. It is one of the most unsafe things that you will see when it comes to vehicles on a major freeway anywhere in this country. It's amazing that everybody, for the most part, walked away unscathed and nobody was killed or seriously injured, John.
I agree. I mean, when I saw it, I'm like, I can't believe that that's all that happened. Really,
I know.
To be honest with you.
It's crazy. But his attorney's a joke. I mean, his attorney, this guy named Royce West, is like a cartoon character. He makes Benjamin Crump look competent. Rashee Rice's attorney put out a statement yesterday that read as follows. And this is him talking to the media. Why don't you do a story of who Rashee is as opposed to what occurred? Because it seems as though what you're saying is based on this one incident. You're going to define him based on this incident, as opposed to his entire body of work. I would say each and every one of you, if all of us had to be defined by one incident, that would be ridiculous, as opposed to our entire body of work. So I'd ask that you as the media look at his entire body of work before saying exactly who he is. That will be better. Okay, chump. You can be a decent person that makes a major mistake, but that does not absolve you from being criticized for your major mistake. You see what I'm saying? I don't think that's difficult to understand. And I know his attorney has a job to do to defend his client. But if you think the media, or anybody for that matter, is going to be talking about that one time Rashee Rice worked at the soup kitchen on a week like this, you're kidding yourself. Okay, that's not the job of the media. In fact, that would be wildly irresponsible of the media. They do that in politics. We see it every day, right? I mean, look at how they treat Joe Biden, for crying out loud. It's like, you talk about kid gloves. But that's not how Rashee Rice should be handled right now. It doesn't mean he's the worst person on the planet. It doesn't mean he's, O.J. Simpson. Doesn't mean he's Ray Lewis. But he made a colossal mistake that could have cost multiple people their lives. And then not only did he do what he did, driving that Lamborghini like a madman, resulting in a 6-car pileup, but he then fled the scene. He just walked away. I'm going to head home. See you guys later. That's horrible. Everything about that is an embarrassment for Rashee Rice. And he is lucky this thing ended the way it did. And for his attorney to try to admonish media, why don't you tell the full story? Why don't you tell the whole picture? I'm not really interested in how Rashee Rice might have helped out a kids camp when he was a sophomore at SMU. That's not really anything that anyone should be caring about right now when he put the lives of dozens of people, if not hundreds of people on that freeway at risk last Saturday in Dallas. That's the story this week, John.
I'm not sure the body of work speaks well. His buddy, Keyshawn Johnson, was chirping at him on social media, right? It says right here, I'm reading the quote from this text. It's coming out into the draft. He had at SMU some little red flag here, a little red flag there. He wasn't the squeakiest, cleanest guy going, which is why he probably fell to the second round instead of late first. That's his buddy talking about him, and he's kind of PO'd that Rashee wasn't getting back to Keyshawn.
Oh.
Was ignoring him and his text, so he kind of came out with that little deal. So
did he?
His body of work might indicate there were some things that we don't quite or haven't uncovered,
Well, that makes sense, right? Because he did have tremendous talent, and he did fall to, the second round when the Chiefs grabbed him. And it's also nothing new for the Chiefs to take some chances on some guys. We know
absolutely
that Andy's got that history going back to Philadelphia. And, he figures he gets them under his wings, so to speak, and he can keep them on the straight and narrow. But when you got young kids who are out there winning Super Bowls, they're back with their boys in Dallas, stuff happens.
And I'm not saying anything to pile on here. All I'm saying is suggesting we look at the body of work may not be your best play, brother, on top of the ridiculousness of it.
Well, the body of work can't be worse than this week. I guess that's what the attorney's figuring, to your
Maybe
point.
So.
But what's interesting is Willie Gay came out and defended Rashee Rice. Willie Gay posting on social media here, as I look at this, a great person. Bleep, we all make mistakes and have to learn from our actions as part of growing up. We believe in God's grace. Forget what a man says. That's Willie Gay on social media. That's not the point. No one's saying that he's not worthy of God's grace. God, come on, Willie Gay. Go to New Orleans and keep your mouth shut. How about that? And that's where he signed, right? He's with the Saints now, I believe.
Correct.
Okay. A great person. We all make mistakes, and we have to learn from our actions. That's part of growing up. Okay. Thankfully, though, we have a legal system in this country that supersedes your friend saying you're a great guy, Thankfully, that's not how we go about running the rule of law in America. Buddy vouched for him. Good guy. All right. It's all good. We'll see you later, pal. All right, you just don't do it again, okay? I mean, that's not how the world works, thankfully. I know some people want to create this lawless society here in Kansas City, and hell, we got that going on right here in Jackson County with Gene Peters Baker. But I'm looking at it right now. They're showing it on CBS this morning, looking at the crash right in front of me here. But that's not how the legal system works. Maybe Rashee Rice is a great guy. Great football player. I'll cheer him on next year. I admit that. Whatever. I mean, call me a bad person, but I will be cheering him on if he scores a touchdown next year. But it doesn't change the fact that the mistake that was made was colossal. And you are not absolved from media criticism. You are not absolved from fan criticism. You are not absolved from the rule of law because your attorney and your buddies say you're a great guy. Part of growing up is learning how to be a man and learning how to take criticism, deal with criticism, and also admit when you bleeped up. And his attorney and these comments from Willie Gay, they're not really helping him at all here. They're too busy making excuses for the guy. 913-408-7957. This is on the text line. Pete, it's clear why Rashee Rice and his buddies walked away from the wreck. They were on their way to church and didn't want to be late. Yeah, that's right. They were trying to catch the Saturday night services like we did last week. Because right now, getting up and out on a weekend morning with a newborn as number 3 is impossible these first few weeks. So, yeah, Rashee was looking good in his do-rag as you saw him walking down the freeway, and he didn't want to miss service, so he decided to, flee the scene.
Yeah, I'm sure Red Lobster's on him.
Yeah.
Get the Red Lobster
I'm not worth
money.
your Red Lobster money.
That's right. Oh, Jesus. Hello. 913-408-7957. Happy Friday. Good morning. It is great to be here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. The jobs report is coming up at 7:35. Scott Wagner, Clay County Commissioner, at 7:45. I want to ask him whether or not Clay County is going to be back in the mix to make a play for the Kansas City Royals. We'll get to all that and more as we roll through a 7 o'clock hour on 95.7 FM.
I'm not worth your Red Lobster money.
Oh, Jesus. Rashee Rice. The statement by his attorney is one of the most insane things that an attorney could ever say after his client admits to driving this Lamborghini down the Dallas highway, putting dozens of people at risk, resulting in a 6-car crash. He flees the crash. Thankfully, nobody is seriously hurt. And his attorneys got the stones to go out there yesterday and tell the media, how about you guys talk about some of the good things that Rashee Rice has done? No, I'm not really interested in that right now. I'm not saying he's the worst guy ever. He's not Ray Lewis. He's not O.J. Simpson. But now's not the time where, like, anyone in media should be like, oh, well, he did go to that soup kitchen once. Let's go to Mike. He's in Kansas City. What's up, Mike?
Yeah, I'm not totally against these attorneys doing that, and I think that we ought to also do the same thing for the January 6th people. We got all that video of these guys walking through the Capitol, escorted by the Capitol guards, let in by the front door. They were just, doing their things there, but they're all sentenced like to 20 years in prison. Maybe we should get those guys and find out that, all the good they did in their life. And, not judging them for the one time they went to the Capitol and were walking around escorted by the Capitol guards, saying prayers for them and things like that. Don't you think that would be a good, thing to do? Maybe
bring
those
up,
guys have the wrong attorneys. They need to get his attorneys.
Yeah, get Royce West on the line. I'll tell you that right now. Jeez. Yeah. Good point, Mike. Good point. Thinking about that, I saw this yesterday. This 71-year-old grandmother who's potentially going to be thrown in jail because she walked around the Capitol for a few minutes on January 6th. Now, I've said for 3.5 years, if you were dumb enough to walk into the Capitol and do all that, even if you just walked around, if you thought that was a good idea on that day, you're really not all that bright. Now, should you spend 10 years in prison? No. Gosh, no. But would I be admitting you as a new member of Mensa anytime soon? No, I would not. Clearly, your judgment is lacking. But it is fascinating that this woman, Rebecca Lorenz, was convicted yesterday on 4 counts after just 3 days of jury deliberation for entering the Capitol building on that day. She entered at 2:43. She, just walked through a door. She wasn't one of these, breaking the windows crazy people. She walked through a door at 2:43. She walked out at 2:53. 10 minutes. Videotape shows that she spoke to one Capitol police officer before leaving, and that was kind of it. FBI agents showed up at her house 3 years ago, and now she is facing jail time, up to a year in prison, and fines of over $200,000, and that doesn't include legal fees. Meantime, if you actually commit heinous acts of violence, you got a DOJ and Blue City prosecutors who are going to slap you on the wrist, right? Meantime, we're going to be sending 71-year-old grandmas to prison. 2 things can be true at the same time on that story as well. People who were doing what they were doing, even if it was innocently kind of walking into a Capitol, you should have probably realized that wasn't the place you wanted to be at that point based on some of the violence that had led up to it. But also say to yourself, is prison time and $200,000 in fines really the way to treat 71-year-old grandmas who roamed around aimlessly for 10 minutes? Right? It's a very interesting point that Mike brought up there here on KCMO 95.7 FM. Now, this weekend's the Final Four, right? Mark, you got your 7-way parlays lined up for the weekend yet?
I do.
Yeah, you're right. Why'd I even ask? So I want to play for you something that Kamala Harris said in an interview. The vice president was talking about the women's game, which has gotten very popular, right? It's really on fire right now, women's college basketball. 12 million people watched that Iowa-LSU game the other night. And Kamala Harris was talking about the growth and the explosion of the women's game, which is great. I mean, it's become very popular. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and the way that sport has blown up. I mean, the numbers on that game the other night, they beat every NBA game last season outside of one game of the NBA Finals. It's crazy. Now, the NBA product is garbage, but still, it's very impressive. They beat every Major League Baseball game last year, including all the World Series games. I mean, it's just impressive. But anyway, here's Kamala Harris.
Do you know
Okay, a bit of a history lesson. Do you know that the women's teams were not allowed to have brackets until 2022?
Huh?
Think about that. And talk about progress,
What?
better late than never, but progress. And what that has done, because of course when, I had a bracket, it's not broken completely, but I won't talk about my bracket.
Stop. I don't need the verbal diarrhea that's going to come after this. What is she talking about? I mean, I just looked it up, and I found Barack Obama's 2011 brackets where he did the men and the women's brackets in 2011. Mark, you're the sports betting guru. What am I missing here?
I don't know what she's talking about.
Okay, all right. I'm sure that's what most people say every day. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. John.
I think she meant 1911.
Maybe.
2011.
Oh, man. What?
Do you know, okay, a bit of a history lesson. Do you know that...
Should have stopped right there. A bit of a history lesson. You knew it was going to be a bunch of BS, right? You knew it wasn't going to be factual at all.
The women's teams were not allowed to have brackets until 2022.
What? Where does she even get this stuff from? Like, I'm genuinely curious where she makes this stuff up in her own mind and then brings it to interviews on national television. It is an episode of Veep, is what it is, every single day in that office. It's wild.